The return of Amelia. The humid air, thick with the scent of damp earth and blooming jasmine, enveloped Amelia like a forgotten embrace. 10 years. A decade had passed since she last inhaled this particular symphony of southern summer and wistful childhood. The taxi, a battered sedan groaning on its weary suspension, coughed its final, indignant breath beside a weed-choked curb. Across the street, the venerable Victorian, its paint faded to a whisper of its former glory, stood sentinel, its porch swing listing like a forgotten memory. Home. Or at least the ghost of one. 45, ma'am, the driver grumbled, his gaze already snagged by the next potential fare. Amelia's fingers, accustomed to a sleeker, modern wallet, fumbled for the familiar, worn leather she'd carried all those years ago. Beneath her shirt, she unconsciously traced the cool metal of the locket. Always the girl. She paid, her eyes locked on the house. A shadow detached itself from the porch's depths, coalescing into a silhouette against the fading twilight. Tall, lean, with a posture that spoke of a life lived on a precipice. Her pulse quickened. Time had etched deeper lines around his eyes, perhaps a testament to worry, but otherwise, he seemed unchanged. "Amelia?" he murmured, his voice a low current, devoid of surprise, as if her arrival were an inevitability. He descended the steps with a fluid, deliberate grace. "It's been a long time." "Too long, Lee," she managed, her own voice a rusty hinge. The air between them thrummed with a decade of unspoken narratives, of shared wounds and aching silence. She searched his eyes, seeking a flicker of the boy who'd once sworn to protect her. A brief, phantom smile played at the corner of his mouth, never quite reaching his eyes. "She's inside," he offered. A brief glance towards the house before his gaze settled back on her. A silent pronouncement of the stakes. Amelia's stomach clenched. "Is she all right?" Lee's expression hardened. "As all right as she can be. She remembers you, you know. Or at least the sliver she saw." The words were a finely honed barb, striking home. Amelia flinched. "I had no choice, Lee. You know that." He took a step closer, his presence a palpable weight. "Doi. All I know is you vanished, leaving a child with a target on her back. A target that's only grown." His hand, calloused and strong, moved, not to touch, but to hover, as if testing the space between them. "You return now, after all these years, and the wolves are circling closer than ever." A shiver, defying the oppressive humidity, traced Amelia's spine. "What do you mean?" "Your presence?" Lee whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's not a secret, not anymore. They've been waiting, watching, and now they know why you're here." The truth of his words settled on Amelia like a crushing stone. She had anticipated the risks, prepared for them, but hearing it from Lee, seeing the stark certainty in his gaze, made it terrifyingly real. "Who?" He offered no direct answer, simply inclining his head towards the front door. "Come inside. There's much to discuss. And she needs to see you." Amelia drew a deep breath, the jasmine now laced with the metallic tang of fear. She nodded, her gaze fixed on the dark maw of the doorway. The girl, the singular reason for her return, the risk that outweighed all others. As she took her first step towards the house, the porch light flickered once, then died, plunging the entrance into an unsettling void. Whispers and renovations. The scent of freshly sawn timber hung heavy in the air, a stark contrast to the familiar mustiness that usually clung to the old house. Sunlight, newly unburdened by ancient, grimy lace curtains, streamed through the large bay windows in what had once been the formal parlor. Lena, paintbrush in hand, hummed tunelessly as she meticulously coated a section of the wall in a calming sage green. Minjun, surprisingly adept with a roller, worked swiftly on the opposing wall, his movements precise and economical. "You know," Lena said, stepping back to admire her progress, "this room always felt so stifling before, all that dark wood and heavy velvet." Minjun paused, pushing a stray lock of dark hair from his forehead. "It had a certain grandeur, perhaps. But yes, the light is much improved. Feels lighter. He glanced at her, a hint of something unreadable in his dark eyes. Like a new beginning. A shiver traced Lena's spine, not from cold, but from the quiet intensity in his voice. She knew what he was referring to. Not just the house, but their tentative, unspoken truce. The fragile understanding that bloomed in the wake of the revelations about Hannah's heritage. Later, as they broke for lunch, a surprisingly elaborate spread Minjun had ordered from a nearby Korean restaurant. The easy camaraderie faltered. Hannah, perched on a stack of paint cans, munched on a kimbap roll, her eyes darting between them. "So," she began, her voice small. "Grandpa called again. He wants to know when we're coming back." Lena's heart gave a familiar lurch. The grandpa was Mr. Kim, Minjun's father, a man whose presence, even across continents, felt like a palpable weight. Minjun set down his chopsticks. "I told him we need more time. The house, the settlement, it's all complicated." His gaze flickered to Lena, a silent question. "He doesn't sound very patient," Hannah added, her brow furrowed. "He said something about family obligations and unforeseen complications if we delay much longer." A cold knot tightened in Lena's stomach. "Unforeseen complications?" she repeated, the words tasting like ash. She met Minjun's eyes. "What exactly does that mean, Minjun?" He sighed, running a hand over his face. "It means he wants Hannah back in Seoul, and he's not above applying pressure. To both of us." The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air, thick as the paint fumes. The Korean mafia boss wasn't known for his subtlety. Lena felt a surge of defiance. This house, this life she was trying to rebuild, felt like her last bastion of control. "He can't just demand things. Hannah has a life here. I have a life here." Minjun's lips thinned. "He believes Hannah's rightful place is with her ancestral family, and he believes you are an impediment to that." He paused, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "He also believes I am neglecting my duties by being here." The weight of it all pressed down on Lena. The renovations suddenly felt trivial. The sage-green walls a flimsy shield against a looming storm. The whispers of the past, of a powerful, dangerous family, were growing louder, threatening to drown out the quiet hopes she was trying to nurture. The paint on the walls might be fresh, but the foundations of her peace felt like they were crumbling. Shadows in the town. The day's oppressive heat finally broke, releasing air thick with humidity, a perfect crucible for Havenwood's burgeoning unease. A fine, persistent drizzle began, transforming the dusty main street into a glistening, reflective ribbon. Naomi, her heart thrumming a frantic percussion against her ribs, cinched her worn trench coat tighter. Beside her, Hannah, a small, plush rabbit clutched to her chest, fixed wide, dark eyes on the shadowy figure emerging from the general store. The man was tall, his silhouette formidable even in the twilight. He moved with an unsettling grace, a predator gliding through a field of sheep. His attire, though understated, spoke of bespoke tailoring, a stark contrast to Havenwood's ubiquitous faded denim and flannel. A cold prickle of recognition slithered through Naomi's veins. It was him, the man she'd seen skirting the town's edges, his presence a dark whisper of the life she'd fought so desperately to escape. "Who's that, Mama?" Hannah's soft inquiry barely carried above the rain's gentle patter. Naomi's hand instinctively tightened around Hannah's smaller one. "No one important, sweetheart. Just a stranger passing through." The lie tasted like ash. He was anything but unimportant. He was an omen. The man paused, head tilted slightly, as if to catch a phantom breeze. His gaze, even from this distance, felt like a physical touch, a frigid probe burrowing into Naomi's marrow. She bowed her head, attempting to further shield Hannah, but it was futile. He had seen them. A slow, knowing smile spread across his lips, a chilling baring of teeth. "Naomi." The voice was a silken threat, smooth as polished stone, cut through the drizzle, resonating with dangerous familiarity. "After all these years, and you've brought a little friend." A surge of defiant anger pierced Naomi's fear. She met his stare, her jaw set. "Leave us alone, Jean. We're not part of your world anymore." Jin's chuckle, a low, guttural rumble, sent shivers down Naomi's spine. He began to walk towards them, each step deliberate, unhurried. "But you are, Naomi. You always have been. And this little surprise you've been keeping, she's very much a part of it too." His eyes flickered to Hannah, a calculating glint in their depths. Sensing the abrupt shift in atmosphere, Hannah whimpered, burying her face into Naomi's side. Naomi's heart hammered. She knew what he implied, what he understood. "She has nothing to do with you, or with him." Jean stopped a few feet away, close enough for the scent of expensive cologne, and something else, something metallic like blood and ambition, to reach them. "Ah, but she does. The little princess right under our noses. He'll be very interested to learn of this." His smile widened, revealing a flash of gold. "And you, my dear Naomi, have been a very naughty girl indeed." The rain intensified, plastering Naomi's hair to her forehead. She gripped Hannah's hand, her mind a frantic blur. This wasn't a warning. It was a gauntlet thrown. A tense encounter. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to the air in Dr. Eris's office, a stark contrast to the muggy soul evening outside. Rain, a relentless downpour, splattered against the large window overlooking the city, blurring the neon glow of distant signs. Hannah sat stiffly on the edge of the plush leather chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the subtle tremor in her fingers betraying her outward composure. Across from her, Dr. Eris, a woman with kind eyes and a deceptively gentle demeanor, reviewed a thick file. "The results are conclusive, Miss Kim," Dr. Eris finally said, her voice soft but firm. "The DNA analysis confirms what we suspected. You are indeed the biological daughter of Mr. Lee Jae-won." A cold dread seeped into Hannah's bones, chilling her despite the stuffy room. The words were a confirmation, yes, but also a final, irrevocable severing of the past she thought she knew. 10 years. 10 years of believing her parents were gone, leaving her alone in the world. Now this powerful, dangerous man was her father. The weight of that truth felt suffocating. "He wants to see me," she stated, her voice barely a whisper. It wasn't a question. Dr. Eris nodded, her gaze sympathetic. "Tonight, at his residence." Hannah pushed herself to her feet, the sudden movement causing a slight dizziness. The ornate clock on Dr. Eris's wall chimed 6 times. The appointed hour was drawing near. The drive to Lee Jae-won's estate was a blur of rain-slicked streets and flashing headlights. The car, a sleek black sedan, glided silently through the affluent Gangnam district, a world away from the bustling marketplaces and cramped apartments she'd known. When they finally pulled up to the imposing gates, flanked by silent, watchful guards, Hannah felt a prickle of unease. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Inside, the house was a cavernous expanse of polished marble and dark, gleaming wood. Every surface reflected the soft glow of hidden lighting. A woman, elegant and severe in a traditional hanbok, led her through a labyrinth of hallways to a large, dimly lit study. The air inside was thick with the scent of aged paper and something faintly metallic, like old iron. Lee Jae-won stood by a tall window, his back to her, gazing out at the rain. He was a formidable silhouette, broad-shouldered and unmoving. As he turned, his face was a mosaic of sharp angles and deep-set eyes that seemed to pierce through her. He was older than the grainy newspaper photos she'd seen, lines etched around his mouth and eyes, but the power emanating from him was undeniable. "Hannah," he said, his voice a low rumble. It was the first time she'd heard her name from his lips. Felt foreign, alien. "Mr. Lee," she replied, her voice steady despite the rapid thrumming of her heart. He gestured to a chair opposite his imposing desk. "Please sit." The silence that followed was charged, heavy with unspoken questions and decades of absence. He didn't offer an apology, didn't try to explain. He simply watched her, his expression unreadable. The air crackled with a tension that threatened to overwhelm her. The rain outside seemed to intensify, drumming a relentless rhythm against the window pane. Hannah's discovery. The familiar scent of jasmine and old paper always comforted Hannah, but today it was tinged with something metallic, almost acrid. She sorted through her mother's belongings, a task that had become a ritual of grief and discovery over the past few weeks. Each item, from the faded silk scarf to the dog-eared copy of 100 Years of Solitude, was a silent testament to a life she was still piecing together. Her mother, gone for a decade, had returned a different woman. Her past a labyrinth Hannah was determined to navigate. She knelt beside an old cedar chest, its surface polished smooth by time. Inside, beneath layers of delicate lace and pressed wildflowers, she found a small, lacquered box. It wasn't one she recognized. Her fingers traced the intricate phoenix etched into its lid, a symbol often associated with Korean mythology. A faint click echoed in the quiet room as the latch gave way. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, was a single, tarnished silver locket. It was heavy, cool against her palm. Its surface was scarred with fine scratches, and the clasp, when she finally pried it open, revealed not the expected photograph, but two tiny, intricately folded pieces of paper. One was a birth certificate, yellowed and brittle, bearing the name Kim Ji-yoon. The date of birth was the same as Hannah's, but the parents listed were not hers. The other was a blurred photograph, a faded snapshot of a young woman with defiant eyes and a familiar curve to her smile, holding a swaddled infant. Hannah stared at the image, her breath catching in her throat. The woman was undeniably her mother, younger, vibrant, but the baby was not her. A cold dread seeped into her bones. Her mother had never mentioned another child. Not once. The locket slipped from her numb fingers, clattering softly against the wooden floor. This wasn't just a secret. It was a chasm. Later that evening, the moon casting long, skeletal shadows across the living room, Hannah confronted her mother. A glass of lukewarm tea sat forgotten between them. "Iyama," Hannah began, her voice tight, holding out the locket and the documents. "Who is Kim Ji-yoon?" Her mother's face, usually so composed, crumpled. The casual ease she'd cultivated since her return evaporated, replaced by a raw vulnerability Hannah hadn't seen in years. Her eyes, usually so sharp, darted away, fixed on some distant point beyond the window. "Hannah, I can explain." "Explain what, Iyama?" Hannah pressed, her voice rising with each word. "That you had another child? That you kept her a secret for 28 years. The air thickened with unspoken truths, with the weight of a past Hannah was only now beginning to comprehend. The silence stretched, unbearable, punctuated only by the distant hum of city traffic. Hannah waited, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, for the story that would either shatter her world or finally make sense of its fragments. The boss's demand. The air conditioner's futile struggle against the oppressive heat did little to cool the invisible blaze emanating from Mr. Han. His office, usually a haven of hushed whispers and subdued hues, now crackled with an unspoken tension, thick and suffocating. Minji stood opposite his formidable desk, its polished mahogany surface mirroring the unforgiving overhead lights, shrinking her under their stark glare. At her side, little Hannah clung to a well-loved teddy bear, her wide, dark eyes flitting nervously between the adults. "So, you've graced us with your presence once more." Mr. Han's voice was a low rumble, devoid of any warmth. He laced his fingers, his gaze unblinking. "After 10 years, and you bring a memento." "She's not a memento, Mr. Han. She's my daughter." He chuckled, a dry, grating sound devoid of amusement. "A daughter whose father, by all accounts, is a specter who burdened you with quite the responsibility." His eyes flickered to Hannah, a fleeting, unreadable glint, curiosity, calculation. In their depths, "What do you want?"
Mini demanded bipasing pleasantries.
She knew this wasn't a social call. Mr. Han operated solely with purpose. Direct as ever. He leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. I heard you've been making inquiries about your past, about your family. He paused, allowing the words to hang, a silent, menacing wait. Some things are better left undisturbed, Minji, for everyone's well-being. Hannah tugged on Minji's sleeve. Mama, can we leave?
I'm hungry.
Minji knelt, her voice softening to a gentle murmur. Just a little while longer, sweet pea. Mama will be finished soon. She squeezed Hannah's hand, then straightened, meeting Mr. Han's gaze unflinchingly. My past is my own. What concern is that of yours? Everything, he stated simply. Your family, they lived under my patronage. A patronage that, as you discovered, evaporated the instant you did. He idly spun a solid gold pen between his fingers. Now you've returned, and certain arrangements are now due. The tension in the room coiled tighter, a palpable force. A cold dread snaked down Minji's spine. What kind of arrangements? Hannah, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, is an intriguing development. Her mother was a valuable asset once. Her father, a puzzle I intend to solve. And until I do, his eyes hardened to flint. She remains with me. Minji's breath caught in her throat. What? No, you can't just abduct my daughter. Her voice climbed, laced with disbelief and raw fury. Hannah whimpered, burying her face in Minji's leg. Oh, but I can. Mr. Han's smile vanished, leaving a stark, grim line. You see, Minji, you vanished without a trace, without a word. And in doing so, you breached a very significant pact. A pact that implicated not just you, but your entire lineage. Your sister, your mother. They bore the cost of your disappearance. A debt I am now collecting. A suffocating weight pressed down on Minji. Her mother, her gentle, kind mother, and her vibrant sister, had they suffered because of her flight? The thought was a shard of ice in her heart. What do you want me to do? Her voice was barely a breath. You will work for me again, he commanded, his voice resonating with unyielding authority. You will do what you excel at, and in return your daughter will be safe under my roof, under my protection. Consider it recompense for the decade you owed me. Minji looked at Hannah, her small face a mixture of confusion and fear. The choice, if it could even be called one, was stark. Her freedom, her fledgling hope for a normal life, pitted against her daughter's safety. The air conditioning hummed, a mocking counterpoint to the tempest raging within her. All right, Minji said, the word tasting like ash, like defeat. I'll do it. Mr. Han nodded, a flicker of triumph in his eyes. Good. We begin tomorrow. And Minji, he leaned forward, his voice a silken menace. Don't even contemplate escaping again. I assure you the repercussions would be far more enduring this time. The chase, a tire's shriek, impossibly close, ripped through the late afternoon's fragile peace. Maya, still reeling from the tea house's sudden ambush, thrust Hannah forward. Run. Don't look back. Despite her sheltered upbringing, Hannah didn't hesitate. Her lithe, athletic form launched into a sprint down the narrow alley, designer sneakers barely whispering on the grime-streaked concrete. A beat behind, Maya plucked a switchblade from her boot, the cool steel a familiar anchor in her palm. 3 figures, stark silhouettes against the setting sun, spilled from a black sedan. Their movements were fluid, disciplined, not street thugs, but professionals. Think you can outrun us, Ajumma? One sneered, his guttural soul dialect a cold spike down Maya's spine. He was the one with the jagged scar bisecting his left eyebrow, a ghost from a decade past. Then, a low-level enforcer. Now, an unnerving aura of authority clung to him. Maya offered no reply. Her gaze was locked on Hannah, now 20 yards ahead, a blur weaving through overflowing bins and forgotten furniture. Maya knew these urban arteries intimately, a lifetime navigating the city's underbelly etched into her very bones. She feigned left, then spun right, a precarious stack of damp cardboard offering a momentary shield. A shot sang past her ear, gouging plaster from the wall inches away. "Stay with me, Hannah." Maya's voice was raw, adrenaline a fierce current through her veins. She saw Hannah glance back, eyes wide with a potent mix of terror and resolve. The girl possessed a surprising core of resilience. The pursuers, however, were relentless. They split. Two peeled off after Hannah, while the scarred man's predatory focus remained solely on Maya. He moved with a disturbing grace, his footsteps eerily light for his size, closing the distance swiftly. A glint of metal in his hand, not a gun, but a jangle, a traditional Korean pickaxe. Old school, lethal. Maya ducked under a whistling arc that would have crushed her skull, the displaced air ruffling her hair. She pivoted, the switchblade a silver flash, aiming for his exposed wrist. He recoiled with a grunt, a thin crimson line blossoming on his skin. He was quick, but Maya, fueled by a decade of suppressed fury and a primal protective instinct, was quicker. "You truly believe you can shield her, Nuna?" he growled, dabbing a bead of blood from his wrist. "She's property. Always was. Always will be." His words, steeped in years of shared history, struck a raw nerve. Maya's movements shifted, less defense, more desperate offense. This wasn't just about Hannah anymore. It was about every broken vow, every splintered dream. She spotted a narrow chasm between two buildings, barely wide enough for her frame. "Hannah! The market! Meet me by the old butcher shop." Hearing the urgency, Hannah veered sharply, vanishing into the bustling twilight market. The two men pursuing her cursed, their frustration a tangible wave. The scarred man, his face a mask of primal rage, lunged again. Maya met him head-on, their conflict a whirlwind of practiced violence in the fading light. The clang of metal on metal echoed through the alley, a desperate symphony of survival. She needed to buy Hannah time. She needed to survive. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the encroaching darkness. Failure was not an option. Not now. Not after everything. The father's heart. The sharp ring of porcelain on polished oak cut through the heavy quiet that descended after Dr. Han's pronouncement. Ji-woo's knuckles, stark white against the teacup, betrayed the composure she desperately clung to. Across the table, Taejun's face was an unreadable canvas, his usually piercing eyes now clouded with an emotion she couldn't quite grasp. "Are you certain?" His voice was a low murmur, yet it resonated with the profound impact of a stone plummeting into a chasm. Dr. Han, her features etched with years of professional gravity, offered a slow, deliberate nod. "The genetic markers are irrefutable, Mr. Han, and Ms. Lee's medical history, it corroborates perfectly." She indicated the open dossier between them, a formidable compilation of scientific reports and personal data. "The child, Mira, is indeed your granddaughter." A complex current of emotions surged through Ji-woo, relief that her long-held suspicion was finally confirmed, and a profound ache for the lost decade. She searched Taejun's face for a flicker of recognition, some vestige of the man she had once loved, the father of her child, beneath the hardened shell of the notorious crime boss. He pushed back his chair with an abrupt, grating screech that made Ji-woo wince, then strode to the expansive bay window overlooking the sprawling cityscape, turning his back to them. The atmosphere in the room grew dense, a palpable weight, like the oppressive air preceding a tempest. Ji-woo understood this was a pivotal juncture. His reaction, be it denial, fury, or acceptance, would dictate their collective future. 10 years, he finally spoke, his voice flat, stripped of all feeling. 10 years you concealed this from me. He pivoted, his gaze, dark and inscrutable, locking onto Ji-woo. "I didn't know," she countered, a slight tremor in her voice despite her efforts to steady it. "Not for certain, and by the time I did, you were already gone. Not just from me, but from any life where I could safely raise a child." The unspoken accusation hung heavy. "You chose this path, Taejun." "Not I." His jaw tightened. "You think I wouldn't have protected her? My own flesh and blood." A hint of something akin to wounded pride, a fissure in his formidable facade. laced his tone. Jiwoo rose, moving closer, her heart thrumming. I believed you were dead, Taejun. Then, when I learned otherwise, the stories, the Han organization, the violence, what kind of mother would knowingly expose her child to that? She paused, her gaze unwavering. But Miare is here now. She needs a family. She needs her grandfather. Taejun's eyes darted from Jiwoo to Dr. Han, then to the closed door leading to the family quarters where Miare was undoubtedly absorbed in a cartoon. A muscle twitched in his jaw. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant thrum of city life. Jiwoo held her breath, observing the intricate dance of emotions across his face. Anger, regret, and a nascent flicker of something almost paternal. He turned back to the window, his shoulders slumping almost imperceptibly. Bring her to me, he murmured, his voice barely audible. Later, when she's ready. He didn't look at Jiwoo, but his words were a surrender, a tentative step into an uncharted future. The storm hadn't yet broken, but the first drops of rain had begun to fall. A new beginning. The rich, dark aroma of freshly brewed coffee was Anya's first greeting as she descended the polished mahogany staircase. Sunlight, splintered by the intricate leaded glass of the front door, danced in shifting patterns across the marble floor. Years had passed since her mornings had been anything but the muted drone of a sterile medical facility or the suffocating quiet of a cramped apartment. This sprawling estate, a stark contrast to her decade-long banishment, still felt like a dream she hadn't quite earned. Jiwoo was already at the breakfast table, a small form perched on a cushion, meticulously arranging a plate of vibrant fruit. Her blunt-cut dark hair gleamed in the morning light. Anya's heart performed its familiar, tender tug. This child, so composed and keenly observant, was both her anchor and her most precious vulnerability. Good morning, Iyama, Jiwoo said, her voice soft yet distinct, offering a perfectly peeled orange segment. Anya's smile was genuine, reaching her eyes. Morning, sweet pea. You're an early bird. She accepted the orange, its bright citrus tang a welcome jolt to her senses. Mr. Kim, the estate's stoic butler, broke the comfortable silence with his arrival, bearing a silver tray laden with steaming delicacies. He moved with an almost preternatural grace, placing a delicate porcelain teacup before Jiwoo and a plate of fluffy pancakes in front of Anya. His words were few, but his quiet efficiency spoke volumes. Did you sleep well, Iyama? Jiwoo inquired, her dark eyes searching Anya's face. Anya recognized the child's silent quest for reassurance, for any lingering shadows from the past. Like a baby, Anya lied smoothly, though fragments of unsettling dreams still clung to her memory's edges. Sterile white rooms, the chilling echo of a distorted, menacing voice. She banished them, finding solace in the warmth of her coffee cup. What are your plans for today? Jiwoo's face brightened. Mr. Han promised to teach me more about the koi pond. He said I could help feed them. Mr. Han, the kindly groundskeeper, communicated best through gentle nods and the hushed rustle of leaves. As Jiwoo chattered about the iridescent fish, Anya's gaze drifted to the framed photographs on the mantelpiece. One image, in particular, snared her attention. A younger, more carefree version of herself, laughing with a man whose sharp, intelligent eyes held a hint of danger. Her husband, the man who had sent her away, believing her dead, for 10 years. The man who was now, impossibly, her protector. A sharp rap on the dining room door startled her. Mr. Kim, ever present, opened it to reveal Detective Lee, his usually impassive face etched with a rare urgency. Ms. Anya, Lee said, his voice low, his eyes briefly flicking to Jiwoo. May I have a word? Privately. Anya's stomach tightened. The easy breakfast atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a familiar prickle of apprehension. She excused herself to Jiwoo, promising a swift return, and followed Lee into a small, elegant study. What is it, detective? She asked, her voice calm despite the tremor she felt internally. Lee closed the door firmly. We have confirmation. The man who orchestrated your disappearance, The one who tried to frame you, he's resurfaced. He's made contact with some of your husband's former associates, stirring up old grievances. A cold knot formed in Anya's chest. The past, it seemed, was not content to remain buried. Who? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Lee's jaw tightened. His name is Kong. He believes you're a loose end. And he's not alone. He's allied himself with a rival faction, a group that seeks to destabilize your husband's operations. He paused, his gaze unwavering. This is no longer just about your past, Ms. Anya. It's about the future of everything your husband has built. And, more importantly, the safety of Jiwoo. The words hung in the air, heavy and inescapable. Anya felt a familiar surge of adrenaline, a primal instinct to protect. 10 years of forced dormancy had not dulled her edges. If anything, they had honed them to a razor sharpness. Kong might think she was a ghost, a forgotten casualty, but he was about to discover that some ghosts fought back with ferocious tenacity. And this time, she had something profoundly worth fighting for. What do we do? Anya asked, her voice firm, the fear replaced by a steely resolve. Tell me everything.